Look at all the women who have no evidence. All these women who suffer from domestic violence, domestic abuse, they don't have evidence. And basically what this jury said is unless you pull out your cell phone and you tape record your spouse beating you, you're out of luck.
But Elaine, I think it was bigger than that because you had the evidence, as you say, but they did not believe her.
Amber Heard and her team of lawyers thought they had the perfect story to throw her ex-husband Johnny Depp under the bus. What they didn't realize was one day, the public will get a hold of all these files, and today we're actually seeing the pieces of evidence the actress and her team fabricated. Apparently, Amber is furious that these facts weren't part of the trial, for legal and fair reasons, if you ask us. Because of that, she requests that the court reverse their judgment against her and either enter a judgment for her or dismiss Johnny Depp's claims without prejudice or remand for a new trial, as long as the old one lasted. She just can't move on, can she? Buckle up because you're in it for a ride. Here's a list of reasons why Miss Guilty Amber Heard wants a new trial. For Team Heard's first reason, they claim that the trial court made numerous evidentiary errors that are severely prejudiced against her. She's so brave to claim something like from a trial that lasted months just to help her case. They talk about how the court quote-unquote intentionally excluded evidence of Johnny being abusive and Amber's state of mind. According to them, Johnny should be branded as an abuser because his ex-wife made so many claims to third parties about his abusive conduct. Well, frankly, that's not how it works. You can't just claim without any decent evidence. They're heartbroken that instead of letting the jury consider this as critical evidence, the Court of Virginia just dismissed it because it was a hearsay. We say it deserves to be a hearsay. There's no right evidence that can say Johnny Depp is an abuser. Word of mouth from someone like Amber isn't just enough evidence. Now they're bitter that Amber's reports of abuse during her time with her therapist were also shoved into the trash. Those were the years when she claimed she had a volatile and violent marriage with the actor. The mountains of evidence from medical records were important to the story, she thinks. You know what's funny? When lawyer Elaine Bredehoff claimed that they had mountains of evidence to back Amber up, turns out that isn't true because there are mountains of evidence coming from Amber, but none of them were admissible. Then again, Team Heard thinks that medical diagnosis or treatments should not be hearsays, but in reality, they will be if other medical professionals also questioned it. They're so quick to say that these pieces of evidence are critical and will truly prove that Amber is a victim of abuse, don't you think? Amber and her team are really blaming the court for preventing the jury from considering so-called abuse stories. Plus, they're adding that a few text messages between Amber and Johnny's ex-agent, Stephen Deuters, were also wrongly dismissed. We remember this so clearly though because Amber made a big deal out of this, but it's still considered hearsay under the law. Honestly, there's nothing so important about the texts. They never publicly released them fully, but we know that was during the time Johnny was talking to Amber only through her employees. What Amber's lawyers find totally funny is that the court excluded the UK judgment entirely, and they would never stop talking about it. It's obvious that that judgment wasn't fair to Johnny at all, and everyone is glad they didn't consider that. Well, everyone except for Amber. Talking about this every day during the Virginia trial just makes it seem like they can never move on. The bitterness doesn't end there. They are also mad because instead of considering that UK judgment, the court admitted evidence of Amber pledging to donate money to charity but never fulfilling it. Camille Vasquez had a field day at work that day, and we truly think that the exchange between Johnny's lawyer and Amber just set the bar high and made them win the case. The court also admitted the evidence wherein Amber was in a weird era. It turns out that Amber was violent towards someone a decade ago, and it wasn't her ex, Tasia Van Ree. It was a police officer who tried to arrest her, and apparently, Johnny was able to contact the guy to give a testimony about Amber's behavior. Why was Amber's team so bitter about this witness, you ask? Well, maybe they're scared that the truth will be revealed. That's a pretty long reason for a mistrial, but let's move on. Amber Heard's second reason for asking for a new trial is because she believes that the court made a mistake when they dismissed the claim based on one headline for the web version of the op-ed because it was not published by Amber herself. The dismissal seems pretty reasonable to us, but not to Amber, we guess. They're putting the blame on the Washington Post this time because they said when they published Amber's piece, the actress didn't even notice how blunt the title was. I mean, who wouldn't notice that? It was pretty straightforward, and once you read it and believe it, Johnny Depp's life would be over, which is what actually happened. They're fighting so hard for this, saying that there is simply no evidence that Amber published or republished the headline. Still, she wrote that thing even if she didn't publish it. She's still guilty of defamation. Reason number 3 for begging for a new trial is because Amber thinks the court improperly instructed the jury on actual malice. This is just outright offensive, especially to the jury. Team Heard believes that the jury wasn't even asked to look for malice in this case when in their verdict, they established that Amber was guilty of defaming Johnny with actual malice. Team Heard is pushing that the jury should have been instructed that it also must find by clear and convincing evidence that Ms. Heard either intended to communicate the defamatory implication or knew of the defamatory implication and was reckless in regard to it. They're saying that it can't be malice because Amber just wanted to say that Johnny was an abuser, not to ruin his life, which literally doesn't make sense because they're one and the same. Moving on to the fourth reason, the Heard team thinks that the jury's verdicts are inherently and irreconcilably inconsistent. That's why we need a new trial. We had a feeling they were really going to blame the jury after they gave a verdict that was in favor of Johnny Depp. They claim that there's no reasonable way to harmonize the verdicts based on the evidence presented at trial. That's why a new trial should be granted. They think that the jury was never consistent and should never be trusted. This isn't the first time they attacked the jury, you know. We're talking about that time Amber's lawyers were saying there was a member of the jury who wasn't even supposed to be there. But it turns out that that wasn't true. It sounded all made up from the start, and now we can't see any claims about that. It's not even part of the evidence. We're guessing they're probably too embarrassed to ever bring it up again. As we reach reason number 5, it feels like the team just gave up. They're claiming that the jury's damages award is too excessive when she personally asked for $100 million when the defamation trial started. You've heard the headlines about Amber being broke, so she says that she could never pay Johnny the rewards, not even a single cent. This may be believable, especially after knowing that she lost the $7 million divorce money and didn't even give it to charity. But then you see all the travels, jet rides, and extravagant activities she did post-trial, and it gets questionable. If she claims she has no money, why is she doing that then? She even had the audacity to go to TJ Maxx, a pretty cheap department store, and have a photo shoot there. So aside from saying that the jury has misconceived or misunderstood the facts or the law, they're also saying that the award they gave Johnny Depp for his compensation is so out of proportion to the injuries suffered as to suggest that it is not the product of a fair and impartial decision. Johnny literally sued for $50 million and Amber countersued for $100. Johnny only got about a really small proportion of that $50 million, and Amber's team are still bitter about it. They don't think Johnny suffered when he lost his career and was left jobless for years because of Amber's accusations. Clearly to them, this was nothing to him. So at the end, they're saying that at a minimum, the jury's excessive damages verdict should be reversed and the case should be remanded for a new trial on damages. Hearing all of these literally sounds like a slippery slope. We don't get why they are attacking the jury and defaming Johnny again just to ask for a mistrial. They could have just appealed in peace and maybe even won if they didn't blame everyone and create such a fuss about everything. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching.